listening to the X-Zone Broadcast Network, www.xzbn.net. Radio's authority on the world of the paranormal and the science of parapsychology, celebrating 25 years of broadcasting. Broadcasting around the world and to the great beyond.
All Hit Radio.
Welcome to the X-Zone, a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. Now, here's your host, Rob McConnell.
Welcome back to the X-Zone, everyone. My name is Rob McConnell, and as everyone knows, on Friday the 13th, just last Friday, there was a horrific terrorist attack in Paris, France. And it has been established beyond a shadow of a doubt that ISIS was the culprit. In fact, they took credit for it, and France has been doing... Well, let's see, they bombed the hell out of a number of cities in Syria. They're going after ISIS with a vengeance. In fact, they've declared war on ISIS. You know, it's not like President Obama, who is afraid to say radical Islam. Like, the French have declared war. So I thought I'd ask a gentleman who has been keeping his eyes and fingers on the pulse of what is going on in the Middle East to join us this hour. Paul Ginex is our special guest. And Nicholas Ginex. Where am I getting Paul Ginex from? Nicholas, welcome back to the X-Zone, my friend. Thanks very much for joining us. And what is your take on what happened in Paris, France on Friday the 13th?
All right. Well, before I begin, Rob, I always want to thank you for having me on your show. I love to talk to your listeners. My take is that, again, President Obama is not reacting in a positive way as the French president did, where he actually came out and declared an act of war. This is sad. I just recently finished reading a book titled Thomas Jefferson and the Tripoli Pirates, rarely taught in our schools. Now, the first war of the United States was with Great Britain, and that was in an effort to become independent of British rule, and it started in 1775. This war lasted 8 years. It ended in 1783. Now, the very next war was conducted with Muslim countries residing along the Mediterranean Sea off the northern coast of Africa. In 1785, an American merchant ship named the Dolphin was attacked by a raiding party of Muslim pirates that captured the captain and his crew. And they were imprisoned in Algiers together with men captured from another ship named the Maria. Now, I mention this because this was, in fact, the very next war happened to be with Muslim extremists. Again, it existed at that time. It's unfortunate that the people around the world, not only American people, do not have a good understanding of the history of Islam. And fortunately, in writing several books, one that really went into the history and a good critique of the Quran was Allah, We, Our, and Us. You have advertised it in your X Chronicles newspaper, and the book is available in all stores, Amazon, and such. But that book does give a clear understanding why the Quran really is the source of discontent and really is the root of what causes the people to become fundamentally, I don't know, shall we say crazy, instead of, Islamic, but to the point that they're willing to kill, Islamic, but to the point that they're willing to kill not only any innocent people, but even members of their own family, and to commit suicide, all in the name of Allah. So this particular religion has a real problem. I just thought I mentioned the Tripoli Pirates. It was a good read. It was a fast read. In fact, I read it in 2 days, and I enjoyed it immensely and learned a lot. But I have a number of thoughts and comments about Obama's reaction.
Or lack of reaction.
Fact, lack of reaction is absolutely right. On April 6, 2009, President Obama had made an announcement by saying the United States is not and will never be at war with Islam. Now, he believes Islam is a religion that preaches peace. This man is delusional. Now, for an educated man, Obama has had poor schooling of the history of Islam. Americans and people around the world need to be educated about the history of Islam and learn its ideology has been a source of discontent in many countries ever since its inception. Americans and people around the world are finding that the Quran and this particular holy scripture is implemented with Sharia law has really created millions of Islamic extremists that kill people who believe in another theology. And this is where the source is. This is the root of the problem. How we get religious leaders in the Muslim communities to understand that it's their own book that's causing a fundamentalist Islamist to commit a lot of abominations. And I don't know, perhaps you might want to add a few words before I go on.
Yeah, I do, because, not everybody believes everything they read, whether it is the Torah, whether it is the Bible. People question it. They take what they want to bring into their life, and they leave the rest there. But it seems that when it comes to the Quran, for some reason, people buy into it hook, line, and sinker.
Exactly. Now, in the book that I just released, and it's coming out, in fact, I have a review copy coming this week. It's titled Obama, Islam, and Benghazi. It has 3 basic topics, but they all weave together.
Mm-hmm.
What I show is that Obama, you brought up a good point. Why is it people who are indoctrinated with Islamic fundamentals are so different? They are not able to open their minds to other avenues of thought. Certainly, if you have an educated man and he's willing to read of other religions and start to compare and critique and learn that, hey, I think I like to follow maybe Christianity.
Mm-hmm.
But he can't do that. The Muslims will, in fact, kill this man. You cannot be an apostate in Islam. And so that's how strict their religion is. Even if you wanted to leave Islam, you're going to be killed. But again, Islam has had a history of capturing the lands of other people all around the globe. And I don't know if I indicated, I did indicate that this empire really grew all along the Mediterranean out to Spain and into northern Africa.
Yes.
And all the peoples that they conquered, they gave them a choice, an alternative. Either follow Islam, pay a tax, and if not, you're a dead person. And this is how Islam grew, not through love and a peaceful means and, oh, this is going to be great for humanity. No. This is a religion that grew by force. And the Islamic religious leaders, they live off the wealth and riches of the lands that they conquered. They're not willing to really work like other people. Just like the pirate ships, where our presidents had to have a war. It was Thomas Jefferson that had several warships built and was able to subdue many of the pirate ships and the Islamic leaders along the Mediterranean. And no longer were we paying them ransom so that our merchant ships could trade with other countries in that region of the world. We were actually paying as much as $200,000 for each ship or whatever, and to get any of the captives back that the Muslims captured, they wanted a ransom. Now Jefferson stood up to the Muslims, and he took the advice of some of the people that are in the book that, as I mentioned, and in a matter of 2 or 3 years, they were able to overcome the pirates and the Islamic leaders along that African coast. But again, from the very beginning, Islam started, which after the death of Muhammad, and that was in 632 CE, this particular civilization, if you call it that, only existed off the wealth of other countries. And again, they existed with piracy. And now they are doing the same thing in the modern world. They are conquering other lands and trying to instill a theology that they were indoctrinated with, the Quran. Now, I recently beliefs in the Quran,
right?
And what I did is I put at least a dozen particular verses, not in the article because it would become awesome. I want to keep the article to maybe no more than 3 pages, so that it can be easily absorbed by the reader. But I indicated the verse numbers. They're called surahs, S-U-R-A, and I put a title for what those particular surah really implies or means.
Mm-hmm.
And I put a dozen of them. For example, one of them is it's a party of men emphasizes intimidation and fear. Another surah, a party of men abrogates God's commands. How does a party of men become sanctioned? It's in the Quran itself. It actually authorizes a party of men to enforce the ideology that's in the Quran. That's unique. A lot of people overlook that. Gee, how is that done? Mm-hmm. Well, it's in the Quran. That's Surah 96. And there's another surah. I won't go through the numbers. Your listeners won't remember them. I have an article that I'm going to print. In fact, I'm going to send it to you. I think you'll like it very much. It's more concise, to the point, but you could very likely put it in your X-Chronicles newspaper. I think it's one of my better articles because I delineate why the Quran is, in fact, the source of discontent and the root of a lot of the terror being caused throughout the world. This is where Muslims learn. The Quran is the only book that they're indoctrinated with, and this particular scripture is enforced with Sharia law. And these are the 2 prime documents that Muslims are raised with and indoctrinated. In fact, the President of the United States, Barack Obama, very few people know that this man was indoctrinated with the Quran in his youth as a young boy. He had about two years or so of indoctrination.
Mm-hmm.
And it must really affect him because he's very slow to stand up against ISIS. He would not even want to associate Islamic extremism with Islam. He can't do that. It's against his nature, and I believe it's this indoctrination.
But Nick, has it ever been proven beyond a shadow of a doubt that the president was indoctrinated with Islam and the Quran? It has, eh?
Yes, it is. In fact, in my book, both books,
mm-hmm.
Allah, We, Our, and Us, and the next book that will be available next month, Obama, Islam, and Benghazi, I actually have documentation. I don't put anything in my book unless it's a fact that has been verified. And I've done quite a bit of reading and research, and I draw my conclusions only from facts. I don't make up stories. I don't like to create anything to sell books. This is not my method. My objective in this world, I'm a man of 80 years of age. I've learned quite a bit. And the one thing that I was brought up and raised with is truth and integrity.
Right.
And I will not let my integrity fall, because I believe in teaching people the best they can be. I brought up 4 daughters, and this was the one thing that I always tried to implement, bring into their minds, is to be the best you can be. And this is also to be honest and truthful. So my books, I hope, resonate with that kind of honesty. And let me point out that with President Obama, that he is so, in my mind, indoctrinated that on September 25th, 2012, he announced a threat to the world at the United Nations General Assembly. This was overlooked by our wonderful media here in the United States, but this is a fact. He stated, and I quote, "The future must not belong to those who slander the Prophet of Islam." Can you imagine? This is a threat at an international forum, warning all countries that their future is in jeopardy if the Prophet of Islam is slandered. Can you imagine? Now, is Obama truly a Christian when he strongly supports the Islamic Prophet, knowing that hundreds of thousands of Christians have been killed by Islamic extremists? Now, I would expect that a Muslim leader would have made that particular statement, not the President of the United States.
Is it possible, Nick, that he was just trying to, be a politician? For example, if he would have said, the same thing that he said with the Prophet Muhammad, if he would have used Jesus Christ instead. I'm just trying to be a devil's advocate here, Nick.
Yes, I can understand that. But this, again, I think verifies that Obama has been really affected by his indoctrination as a young boy. Because if he stands up in a public forum and to the world says to countries, to those who slander, to those, who are those? People around the world, countries that exist. If they slander the Prophet of Islam, they have no future. What kind of talk is this? This is the talk of a Muslim. I'm sorry to say, I never have said that he is a Muslim. I will say this. He was indoctrinated as a Muslim in the Quran. Now, he's not a full-fledged Muslim, but let's face it. In his administration, we know as a fact that in all of his major particular offices like Homeland Security and things like that, he has in fact hired and brought into his administration Muslim people. Some of them even from the what do you call it? The Muslim
Brotherhood?
Big party.
The Muslim Brotherhood.
Exactly,
Yeah.
the Muslim Brotherhood. It has been documented that several of appointments for people from the Muslim Brotherhood.
But what, how does that affect anything? Because there are good and bad in every religious philosophy, Nick. There's good Christians, bad Christians. There's good Jews, bad Jews. There's good Catholics, bad Catholics.
Yeah, but there is a big difference because of the Quran. It has indoctrinated their people. The religious leaders use the Quran whereby they do much more than any other religion. Am I coming through all right? Because I hear a little scratching.
Yeah, you're fine.
Sometimes.
You're fine.
Oh, okay. You see, the one big distinction with the Islamic religion is that they kill people who believe in another belief. Now, the Christians don't do that. The Jews don't do that. And what might have been done hundreds of years ago, the Muslims say, oh, well, Christianity, they had the Crusades. But that's a very weak argument.
Well, let me ask you this question, my friend. Has Allah ever killed anyone?
Allah is just a figment of it's a god. It's a made-up god.
Okay, so
Allah is not a person. It's a god.
I understand that. So anywhere, has it ever shown or been proven that Allah, this deity, has ever killed anyone?
It doesn't matter.
Yes, it does. And it does because, we were saying that...
Go ahead.
Because we were saying that, that Muslims kill. Well, we Christians, Catholics, Jews have a God that killed his own people. Destroyed.
Yeah, but that was a god.
Well, okay.
It wasn't done by Christians themselves. That was a story. And it may, in fact, be a myth. That's in the Bible, exactly.
Right.
But again, let's not take that as strict history, because written in the Bible, it's not really history. It's a set of documents. It's a set of commands and way of formulating ways how people can live together in a community. It's a moral code.
Okay, so let's look
to
at
enforce that code. Go ahead.
I was going to say, Nick, it seems that for whatever reason, Muslims will unconditionally follow what is in the Quran. Why is that? Why?
Because of the kind of indoctrination, Rob, this is the one religion that has Muslims pray 5 times a day. Not only that, they face Mecca.
Mm-hmm.
No matter if they're on a ship. This was another laudable thing that I was reading in the book, a title again, Thomas Jefferson and the Tripoli Pirates. When the Americans captured Muslims and they were bringing them back to America, they wanted to pray to their God. And the ship had to use their compass so that they were pointing in the direction of Mecca so that these particular people could pray to happy. But it's this indoctrination that's instilled if you're praying 5 times a day. My wife is a Christian and a good Catholic. She goes to church every week and she sings in the choir, but she doesn't pray 5 times a day. Having this, the Quran instilled in your mind constantly, this is brainwashing and very different from what is taught, a moral code how to get along with other people. Brainwashing is very different, where people are not able to think on their own because their mind, which is a blackboard, is obliterated with just one set of thoughts, of ideas. And in fact, they do not encourage their people to read books other than what they prescribe. Philosophy, for example, is not allowed because it opens up people's minds to think along other avenues and to question other views. And once the mind starts to learn how to think that way, well, you're going to start questioning Islam, and they don't want that.
Nick, you and I have to take a commercial break with the news at the bottom of the hour. Please stand by. Exonation, Nicholas Paul Ginex is our very special guest this hour. It's always great having Nick around. And I'll be back on the other side of this break with Nick as we continue here in the X Zone from our broadcast center in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Worldwide, toll-free 800-610-7035. Email xzone at xzoneradiotv.com, on all social media sites, Xzone Radio TV, and our main radio site where you can listen to the X Zone 24/7, 365, www.xzoneradiotv.com. The X Zone, a place where people dare to believe, dare to be heard, Monday through Friday from 8 p.m. Eastern until midnight, right here on the X Zone Broadcast Network, the Digital Broadcast Network, and the Digital Satellite Network. Don't go away. First of all, let's start off by getting the following understood. I am not a psychic, medium, channel, intuitive, soothsayer, nor the practitioner of any art of divination. I am a Canadian, a broadcaster, a journalist, a publisher, and a realist. I tried warning people about the refugee problem with on-air commentaries and videos that I had produced, but no one listened. I was called a racist, and every name under the sun. Well, look what happened in Paris on Friday the 13th, 2015. The X Zone was the first media outlet to openly make the Friday 13th connection, and was the first media outlet to broadcast the fact that ISIS had claimed responsibility for the terror in the attacks on Paris. This is war. I hate to say it, but it is going to get worse before it gets better. My heart and prayers are with those who have lost family, friends, and countrymen and women in this war that ISIS has openly declared, again, against the Western world. The time for talking is over. We must support France and other free countries against Islam. We must close our borders to Syrian refugees. Again, we need to give refugees a safe zone in Syria by a military coalition where they can live and be protected and supported by the United Nations until the time comes when ISIS and their supporters and sympathizers have been wiped off the face of this earth, at which time the refugees from Syria can return to their homeland. The military and intelligence services must be given all the resources they need to fight this fight. It is time we stopped turning the other cheek and started fighting fire with fire. This is no time to be over-politically correct. For the X Zone radio and TV show and the X Chronicles newspaper, I am Rob McConnell.
I am Dr. Carl O'Helvey, founder, president of a new cancer foundation focusing on evidence-based physical, mental, and spiritual interventions, including natural cancer cures, prayer, meditation, affirmations, nutrition, and other related holistic cancer prevention and cure modalities. These are used in cancer education, research, and financing care. I ask for your help to continue this important work by donating at www.holisticcancerfoundation.com.
While science pursues fact, magic accesses the quantum level, bridging random facts to form truth. As long as science and magic remain separate and polarized, the truth cannot be known. I'm Wilda Wieka. Join me on the Science of Magic radio program dedicated to unification and evolution of consciousness. During each episode, I'll be speaking with experienced and respected scientists and mystics. From astrologers to astronomers, from medical doctors to shaman, the scientific method to dowsing and intuition, we will weave together information from seemingly divergent practices to promote unity and enlightenment. Join me, Wilda Wieka, and the Science of Magic right here on the X-Zone Broadcast Network. For more information, visit www.thescienceofmagic.net.
What if Jesus came back now and insisted that we listen to him? How would the world be different if Christians really followed the Gospels? For 2,000 years, we've been practicing a religion. Now it's finally time to get it right. Read Liberating Jesus, new from Roberta Grimes. Meet the Jesus you never knew. Roberta uses afterlife evidence and biblical analysis to prove that Jesus is exactly right. Learning the lessons that he came to teach is the reason we are born at all. Roberta says he has come back now to insist that we actually listen to him so we can begin to use his teachings to unite and transform the world. Liberating Jesus wherever books are sold. Jesus has the answers, and it's not too late. Roberta blogs and answers questions at robertagrimes.com.
Welcome back, everyone. Right now, there are more than 20 U.S. governors that are saying, we're going to shun refugee resettlements, and that includes Indiana, Arizona, New Mexico, Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas, Nebraska, Iowa, Wisconsin, Illinois, Arizona, Louisiana, Alabama, Mississippi, Georgia, Florida, South Carolina, North Carolina, Tennessee, Ohio, I said that already. Michigan, New Hampshire.
How about California and New York? Are they there?
California and California is not commenting.
Not yet.
Not yet. And let me see. New York. Let me see. That looks like it should be New York.
Well, I don't know. What about Washington, D.C.?
It's not. No. These are only governors and U.S. states.
Oh, yeah.
No.
Okay.
So it seems that the governors have more balls than the president has.
Well, they a lot of people in America understand the problem. I've listened to a few commentators on the radio today, TV, and some of them went as far as to say that Obama is delusional. And this may be true. By the way, I listened to. I want to just interrupt, Rob. I listened during the break. You had stated something about ISIS and why it is a threat to the world, and you had a very good dialogue. I would hope that you print that in your X-Chronicles newspaper. I enjoyed listening to what you had said.
Well, thank you.
I agree with everything that you indicated.
Thank you, my friend. I appreciate that coming from you.
And I would like to add to that, over the past few weeks, Americans and people around the world are starting to wake up that the ideology of Islam produces Islamic extremists. And they have the objective to dominate the world. We know that on October 31st of this year, Russia felt the arm of Islam, ISIS. They reached out by downing a Russian plane with a bomb over Egypt, where they killed 224 people. There was a series of ISIS planned attacks in Paris and on France. And in France, on Friday, as you know, there was a brutal murder of 141 people, wounding 352. Those numbers may have changed.
Yeah.
And in fact, a day after the Paris attack, France launched its biggest bombing raid against ISIS in Syria. Now, it seems that the countries around the world are starting to recognize that Islamic terror is a pervasive threat and that it must be defeated. I agree with you wholeheartedly. Russia's Vladimir Putin and China, President Xi Jinping, have vowed to support the French president, Francois Hollande, to fight ISIS. I don't know if I pronounced it right.
Yes, you did. Yeah.
Okay. But President Obama, again, has been slow to issue a powerful response that the U.S. will be strongly aggressive to eliminate ISIS. He said, and I quote, "We stand prepared and ready to provide whatever assistance that the government of the people of France need to respond." But this, unquote. Now, this is a strange response. It's not weak. Here we have an American president that should be France's staunch supporter, who has been an ally in the past, as I mentioned, in our war with the British and later with pirates, and also in World War III. But here's Obama, and he indicates that the U.S. will react to terror based on what France would do instead of taking the lead to defeat ISIS.
Nick, I have to ask you, why did you reference World War III?
Oh, I'm sorry, World War II. That was my era. World War II. I think it's because, Rob, I'm anticipating World War III. I'm sorry to say that.
Well, even the Pope today said that, this attack is the start of World War III.
Well, you have countries that are starting to realize that the integration or the migration of Muslims are overwhelming their values and their culture. The Muslims, because of the Quran, they don't really integrate with other people and try to adapt to other laws in society. They cling to Sharia law and the Quran. So they live in these communities and in such a way that even the police of that country are afraid to enter because they are so rebellious and hard to deal with. And they're starting to realize, hey, they're starting to really change our way of life, and we've got to stop it. It's taken them a long time to realize this.
Well, other countries are catching on, but look what our prime minister did here in Canada, the new young Trudeau. He's pulling the jets out of the coalition, our fighter jets, because of a campaign promise that he made. Well, excuse me, Mr. Prime Minister, that was before the attack on Paris, France. Keep our bloody jets in there.
Exactly. What's wrong with your minister?
Well, let's see. This is
Canada.
Well, number one, he's young. He's only 43 years of age. He has to live in his father's footsteps. The Prime Minister Pierre Elliott Trudeau. See, Trudeau faced the FLQ, the Front Libération du Québec, the separatist strong arm, the separatist army that wanted to separate Quebec from Canada. He stood up to the terrorist. He stood up to the separatists. He brought Canada together in a time of crisis. Now you've got his son, who I just hope that he understands the gravity of the situation. and he supports the coalition. Because, what would happen if NATO implemented Article 5, if France implemented Article 5 that says if you attack one member, you attack them all? Now, France has already declared war on ISIS. If they, in fact, if they pull up Article 5 or if they enact Article 5, what is the United States going to do at that point? What is Canada going to do at that point?
Well, if we're supposed to be an ally and part of the group, we ought to come to assist them.
Exactly.
If not, we're really, yellow bellies. But it's not the Americans. It's our president, Obama. He's I think, going to be considered one of the worst presidents this country ever had.
But he is still the president of the United States until he leaves office. And what scares me is I watched a little bit of the Democratic debate the other day. And I've got to tell you something. Hillary wants to bring in 65,000 Syrian refugees on top of what they bring in. Like, is she on crack?
I suspect that the past administrations, be it Democratic and Republican, because it starts even with Clinton when we had the bombing of the USS Cole. He did not react. That was an act of war, but we didn't do anything, right? Then later, one of the real bombings, which was the buildings in New York, where planes killed as many as more than 3,400 people. More people were killed in that attack than were killed at Pearl Harbor. Again, no act of war. This was truly an act of war, but we didn't do anything. Now, let's see if Obama is going to do anything. The reason why I believe that these administrations have not been doing anything is that from, the 1980s or so and earlier, there is an oil cartel where big business and America and the British as well, and England, they have oil interests with Arab countries. And to preserve their inflow of funds or whatever the hell they're doing, they are not declaring an act of war. It's very easy to be able to associate a particular group of terrorists with the country they're from. Mm-hmm. And if we do that, bomb the daylights out of them, and I guarantee you it will not happen again. But somehow there is, I think, this particular flow of money coming into the administrations through Arab funds and kind of propping up their leniency towards Muslim extremists. That's a little undercurrent feeling that I get.
Money talks, right?
Well, I wrote an article, and I had it published on another. I think you're familiar with the website, IranianPoliticsClub.net.
Yeah.
This particular professor, who in fact takes care of that website, he built the website. He is in fact from Iran. His people are Persian, and a number of his people were murdered by Islamic people. And so what he's done here in the United States, he's built this website. Again, it's called IranianPoliticsClub.net. Mm-hmm. And on it he has some of the greatest Persian authors and writers and painters and inventors. And he honored me. I was so honored because he liked the way I wrote. I had to ask him permission for a photograph that I used on my book titled Allah, We, Our, and Us. It was a photograph of a woman half buried in the sand by two Iranians, and she's about to be stoned to death for sexual indiscretion. That brought tears to my eyes, and I could not let it stand. I wrote the book because of that. But I asked this particular, he's called Dr. X. He doesn't want to be known by his full name. of the website. I asked him for permission to use that photograph, and he said fine. But we got into a dialogue. He liked the way I wrote to him, and we got into discussions on philosophy as well as religion. And in fact, he has a dialogue of about 20, 30 pages on his website of just him and I with a discourse. And I am honored to say that he put 3 of my books on his website. My first book, called Future of God, Amen. Yeah. And then the next book, which a few books later, Allah, We, Our, and Us. And this third book, he put in my draft, but he's going to get the final edition. In fact, I made it a second edition because there were some errors.
Nick, our time is going very fast, and I'd like to bring you back to the initial question that I asked you way back when. Give me your take on the terrorist attack in Paris on Friday the 13th past.
Well, as I had indicated, I only know the results of how many people were killed. And
you've studied the Quran. You kind of keep your books are based on the actions and reactions of.
Yes, but I do not know the pulse of the French people. I do know this, that they are at least have gotten wise to the fact that they must stop the immigration of Muslims into their country. They cannot really take it much longer. And I'm glad to see that the president of France has declared war against Islam. This is a wonderful stance that he's taken. I will say this, that there is the problem, and that is the Quran. And unless people realize this problem is going to stay with us for centuries. And so I would like to end at least my take on this with hopefully a solution. How do you solve the problem? And I would like to say that after I have read the Quran, I know that it is the source of discontent in many countries throughout the world. It is what causes Muslims to kill innocent people, in fact, their own family members. And they even give up their own lives for the Islamic God, Allah. Okay, so the solution is clear. This holy book, the Quran, must be revised. And the verses that breeds abominable behavior has to be eliminated.
But how are you going to get all the people who believe in the Quran, and they're
that's the next part of my paragraph here.
Okay.
Well, that's the next part of my solution.
All right.
I know that it's going to be difficult for the Islamic leaders to learn a new point of view, or to attain the courage to forgo a lot of the verses in their scriptures. But it is the youth of today, the Muslims around the world. And it is basically they are becoming more educated. And I think that they will begin to understand the problems are really inherent in the Quran. And they need to rise up against the religious leaders to help them see the necessity to revise the Quran. It is with the youth, the Muslim youth. Now, if they cannot meet this challenge, the dilemma of living with a deadly cancer that will cause more deaths of innocent people will just continue. So that, to me, is the only way to solve the problem. Yes, we are going to be able to destroy many Islamic terrorists, but as long as that book, the Quran, is used by Muslims, I know there are a lot of wonderful Muslim people in this world, but when you're indoctrinated with a book, when you're indoctrinated with a book that teaches and advocates abominations, and that I list in my books that I mentioned earlier, there's no way out but more discontent in the world. It's going to happen.
But if the indoctrination is so effective.
It is effective.
All right. If it's so effective, how are you going to get that to change? You know,
again,
it's nice to be.
It's education, as I said before. This is what Obama is hoping for. He says, "Oh, it's going to take a decade, maybe 2 decades."
It's not going to work.
What he's hoping for is that the Muslim people become educated to the extent that maybe they become more humble and learn to love humanity.
It ain't going to work.
But unless the Quran itself is changed, it's not going to happen. It will not happen. And and this is where people like yourself in the media, the American news and TV, we have to have a campaign that advertises why Islam is in fact the source of discontent, why it is the root of extreme fundamentalism and terrorists around the world. We've got to indicate, just as my books indicate. I'm not trying to sell my books. I don't give a damn about getting rich. I want to inform people and let them learn something in their lives. I've learned a lot, and I want to share it with them. And it's up to them to take the opportunity to learn why this particular religion is not going to make it any better in any way unless the religious leaders somehow get together and say, hey, we are the problem.
And do you really think that's going to happen, Nick?
If it doesn't happen, we got to blow them up.
It hasn't happened over several centuries. I think that the political way of dealing with radical Islam is not going to work. Politics will not work when it comes to those who are radicalized. The youth are their next generation of warriors, high-tech warriors with who are able to use the social media to inflict terror by even these videos that they put out.
Well, you're right. Here I'm trying to make a case for the youth, but you're saying that, gee, even educated youth are the ones who, in fact, are putting all this particular hogwash over the air and getting people to come to their cause. It's a shame.
It is.
It goes to show you that you're right. Islam indoctrination is highly effective. That is the word. And it's also pervasive because it is starting to encompass the minds of people around the world, and it's a shame. There has to be, again, a network of news media